labeling machine. He's Todd. Rides a motorbike. He'll tell you what it's like. He's Todd. Don't know what he'll say. He'll scare the kids away. He's Todd. He's Todd.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending upon your time zone. Hey, it's Thursday again, and we are now bi-weekly with this. I know everyone's getting inundated with Zoom calls and webinars and blah, 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 blah. So we're going to ease up a little bit, but we are going to try to do something, I think on the 13th, Kelly was saying, to where we're going to use a new platform, LinkedIn Live, which is going to make it a lot easier for those folks on LinkedIn to just jump right in the meeting without going through all these different steps. So anyway, I'm looking forward to that, getting more folks on board, but I do appreciate everyone who's here this morning. And we're going to talk about data centers today. And data centers, man, I love data centers. You know why? Because there's lots of labeling in data centers. And I put together a little something that'll go through as far as a little presentation. I don't want to give any death by PowerPoint, but I'm going to go through some of what should be in there. And there's all sorts of variables as well, too. There goes the ums again. Anyway, I've asked Jamie to keep track of kind of how we do or how I do at the end of this thing, to give me a scorecard. So hopefully, Jamie, you're paying attention. Speaking of Jamie, Jamie Brookover is back there somewhere. Jamie, would you turn on your, oh, wow, look at that head of hair, man. It's been 2 weeks since I've, seen you?
It's been 2 weeks.
Man, yeah. Look at that. Mr. Al Lewis, AKA Grandpa Munster, man. I love it. So anyway, Jamie's in the background. Jamie's in Virginia Beach. Jamie's in the background. He's going to be answering any questions you may have about what we're going to talk about today, which again is going to be data centers. So I'll share a couple of screens with you. Jay Salanga just asked a question. Todd, did I lose weight? No, Jay, I've actually put on about 30 pounds. So I lower my chair, which brings the desk up a little higher. And so, you know, anyway, it's just a different perception. But thanks for asking. It's good to see you on board this morning. So anyway, I'm going to share a couple of points, and then I'm going to give you my viewpoints, because I actually, believe it or not, when I used to work for a living, build data centers. And so I'm very familiar with the data centers and the labeling and the infrastructure and everything that goes in there. So I'll talk about what I see when I go out to these data centers and take a look and help these data centers improve on their labeling. So anyway, if you got any questions, like I said, ask Jamie in the background. I'm going to share a couple of screens. Let's go with this death by PowerPoint here real quick. It's just going to give you, let me click on the right thing here. Come on. All right. And let me get this damn thing out of the way up here. So here's some core components. And a lot of this is going to be old school. All right. And for those who aren't familiar with data centers out there, these are the core components that make up data centers, if you will. You have your, your electrical equipment, your mechanical equipment, your facility, and your IT infrastructure. Hell, I'm going backwards already. It's only Thursday. Sheesh. All right. So your benefits of a properly labeled data center, obviously faster troubleshooting, and that's where people seem to get into problems in data centers, specifically colos, because colos can at times have their own labeling schematics and way they do things, and it can get very confusing. So I go back to the ANSI TIA 606A standards, which should be used in all these particular data centers. I see some that do and some that don't. But if you use the 606A, in which I'm more than willing to help you with, it makes life a lot easier. It's also going to reduce your downtime. 88% of downage is caused by moving the wrong components. And if they're not labeled and that technician is not familiar with that data center environment, and he unplugs the right or the wrong thing, you got big issues right there. So again, labeling is key there as well. The saving cost goes into the reducing downtime, obviously, because you don't want to reduce downtime. Time is money. Lost and found, that's basically asset management. And asset management, the more I go out to data centers, I'm teaching a lot more about barcoding, QR coding, and the ability to get more information onto a QR code, which can be scanned by your phone. And then that information pops up on the screen. So it makes life a lot easier. So that's starting to develop a little more as we go along. Obviously, it helps in the prevention of theft. We have tamper evident labels that you can put on the active and passive electronics. You can put on the racking. So again, keep that in mind too when you're labeling, is that the tamper evident can be very beneficial to that. Now, obviously, you have your asset tracking and inventory control, which can be big. So here's some of the things, and again, it's not limited to this, but here's some of the things that I put together in regards to really the core components of the types of labels that you put inside data centers. Racks and cabinets, and these are kind of the obvious, but racks and cabinets, your panel label, all right? Your port labels, your patch cables, your conduits, your raceway, your pathway, your data cables, your grounding, your bonding, your fire stop, access control, transformer, generator, switch gear, UPS, PDU, remote power panel, rack, power outlet, service switches, routers, active electronics, passive electronics, mechanical safety and facility signage, which includes fire, suspension alarm, piping, and warning. A lot of times these contractors, they kind of split it up. You could have the HVAC folks putting on labels. You could have your data contractors putting on their labels. You could have the electrical people putting on their labels. But at the end of the day, whoever is in charge of that data center, you got to make sure that all this stuff is in place. It's a CYA, for everybody. And it goes back to the previous screen where you have all these issues if it isn't done right. So there's some of the basic components that we have here. Very important, very, very important here. And I learned this back in the day where this wasn't really so important. Your grid layout, all right? And so if you're sending in a new technician who doesn't know the layout of the data center, and I really don't care how big or small the data center is, it's either gonna have a raised floor environment where you have tiles, or it's going to have a suspended ceiling that they're going to have tiles up there. This is very important. As far as downtime is concerned, if you're telling a technician that you have an issue in a certain cabinet, a certain port of this particular patch panel, finding that rack or cabinet is very important. So again, I think this is one of the key components that a lot of times is overlooked when putting a data center together. So please keep this in mind. And again, if you got any questions about this stuff, I'm more than willing to help. Most of us out there are seasoned professionals when it comes to the data center environment. But again, please reach out with any questions. So here's some examples of some of the basics we have here. And it shouldn't say data center grid layout there, grid layout up there, but I apologize. So obviously you got patch panels, you got ports, power is very, very important in a data center. You have your active and passive electronics. Look how old that patch panel is down there. Category 5, hell, I can't even read it, but that's ugly. Anyway, and then over on the bottom right-hand side is kind of your asset management. And again, that could be for any active or passive electronics, but very important in identification. The color coding, when it comes to the infrastructure, I'm seeing a lot more data centers use color coding. Now, according to ANSI TIA 606C, it's not required, right? When you get into the electrical side and the NEC part and the power equipment, much more prevalent. But again, there are a lot of different color combinations. Again, it's not mandatory, under 606C, there are some guidelines on the electrical side that need to be adhered to as well. Some of the other things that we do, whoop, beep, 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 burp, all right. So here's some of the things that you can do with our machines that a lot of people don't realize. You know, we're known for our patch panels and we're known for our face plates and cable wraps and flags and blah, blah, blah. But here's some of the other things that we're known for. So warning signs, electrical warning signs, fiber optic warning signs, piping. Piping's very important inside of a data center. Lockout, tagout. Dan had a segment, and if you hadn't seen it, you can go back and take a look at it. I think it was last week. There are a couple segments on the lockout, tagout. And typical lockout, tagouts, people are just using a Sharpie. You know, they'll buy this tag somewhere. They'll use a Sharpie to write in, and if you shake like a leaf like me, it's going to look like hell. So again, lockout, tagout is very important. Now, what I included on the bottom right-hand corner here is some new labeling. And again, this is, you know, the rules and the laws change every day, and I don't know if this is mandated yet. But things like this, you know, the masks and the wash your hands and the social distancing, you can see up here, I've got some examples up here from the social distancing. And so those actually come out of these machines. So keep that in mind when you are doing labeling inside of a data center. We have a plethora of different options that you can use for these particular labels here. So let me, I'm going to stop the share on that. So some of the things that I run into from issues in a data center, all right? Let's talk about that. So you're dealing with airflow, which causes disruption. You're dealing with a lot of heat. And I've been in data centers where it's just hot as hell, all right? One in particular was in Arizona. Go figure. You're dealing with cold environments as well. And so you have all these disrupting factors when it comes to labels. And I know one case in particular, I was in a data center in Arizona back in the day when we could travel. And they were not using Brother products. They were using our competitors' products, which I'm not legally supposed to name, but it wasn't Brother. And there were flag labels. The problem is that because of the heat and they were flag labels, it was bleeding through. And so you can, first of all, the flags weren't turned the right way. They were backwards. So you're not able to read what's on the label because it's turned the other direction, but yet you can see it through the lamination where it was bleeding through, and it was absolutely horrid, terrible. And so flag labels are very prevalent inside data centers. Again, I think the heat affected those. And then obviously the inability to read it, not putting it in the right position. So what happens is if I'm called out to, let's say, troubleshoot that particular, anything inside that cabinet, whereas I could have looked from the outside in to see that identifier, now I've got to get somebody to get a key and open that up, and I physically have to touch that cable to see what that identifier is. You know, there could be some liabilities there. You never know, all right? So again, you want to make sure that everything you have label-wise is going to withstand the heat, is going to withstand the cold, is going to stay on. That's the other thing I see too, not in this particular data center, but I can walk into data centers here and there, and I look at the bottom of the cabinet. I'm anal about that stuff, but I'll look at the bottom of the cabinet and I see labels lying on the ground. And then you look up and you see wires and cables that have no identifiers on them. So again, you're just asking for issues there. So you want a label that's going to stick until you physically take it off. You want something to withstand the heat, the cold, and then the airflow as well. So with Brother, and here's a great example, and I've had these in here now for 17 weeks, I believe. I got a flag label in here, which is still very legible. I know that's tough for you guys to see on there. I told you I shake like a leaf. I got a cable wrap. This one's in oil, by the way. This one's in water. So again, if you need a tough label that's going to stay on until you physically take it off, think about brother. There's a couple of different machines that you can use too. There's another Jamie. So from a data center perspective, I start off, or I'm going to start off by the PTE 550, and I know I beat this horse to death, but what a great machine for data centers. And you have the ability to download a database into this machine, thousands of labels into the machine. And you can break it up into different quadrants if you want, different cabinets if you want, different sections of the data center. And those databases are now housed inside the machine that the techs are working from. So it's a great mobile tool. I might as well expand upon that as well. The majority of the data centers that I go into are using Fluke, and they're using the new Versa, the DSX. So one of the things that the PTE 550 does is we have a partnership with Fluke. And again, you guys have seen this before. I'm just going to share this real quick for those that haven't seen it. But the whole idea is that if you're in a data center environment, you could have the data center manager sitting at his desk. He's going to do an Excel spreadsheet. That Excel spreadsheet is going to be up into Linkware Live. That technician on the floor is going to utilize the phone or his smart device, iOS or Android, to go up into Linkware Live and bring that database in and load it into the 550. And then at the same time, that same identifier is still up in Linkware Live. You can use the Fluke app to go up there, and again, everything meshes. There's no mistakes. Of course, you got human error in play here, but the one thing you really don't want to do, and I know there's onesie-twosies, but if you're doing a big install, or if you have a new rack or a rack and stack or a cabinet you're putting in, wouldn't it be nice to have everything in an Excel spreadsheet where you can just dump it in the unit, and then all the tech does is he brings up that information, hits the print as well. So again, that's something that's very unique to the PTE 550. 3 M's, I think, Jamie, kind of keep track for me, will you? The desktops, the advantage of the desktops is that, number one, you can go up to a 1.5 inch or 36 millimeter, if you will, whereas the PTE 550, you have 1 inch. Now, the PTE 550 can still do your patch panels. It can still do your general labeling. It can do your flags. It can do your workstation outlets, your disconnects, your cable wraps. But if you need anything bigger, so let's say if you want to put some bigger signage up there, bigger labels up there, you want to use the desktops. The other advantage is this will print at 360 by 360 DPI, where this is 180 by 180 DPI. Now, I personally can't tell the difference. I'm semi-blind as a bat, but I can't tell the difference. But there is a difference. Now, what that means is that you can get more information on the labels, and it's going to look a lot clearer as well. So we have a couple of different versions. This is our PTP series, and it comes in either a networking version or a PC Direct, USB, if you will. Typically, the way these work is, from what I see, the PTP series is that they need to be tethered to a computer. So if you have one particular workstation in a data center that's all they're doing is pumping out labels, it's a great alternative. Now, you can still do the patch panels and the cable wraps and the flags and blah, 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 blah out of this one, but you're going to do it with our P-Touch editor software. That's the easiest way to do it. My favorite desktop machine is this guy right here. It's the PTE 800. I normally say it's the new PTE 800. It's been out now for a year and a half, 2 years. The beauty of this machine is that it takes the attributes of both of these and it combines it into this machine right here. But it gives you mobility. So you have a lithium-ion battery, just as this does. It still can be connected to a PC, like all of these can, everything in front of you. But now with the lithium-ion battery, the beautiful thing about this is that you can load a database into the machine just like you can the 550, and it becomes mobile. So you can take it from row to row and from rack to rack and cabinet to cabinet. It also has a, let me get this out of the way here. You have a removable full-size QWERTY keyboard, which is pretty cool. All right, I don't know if you all can see that. Now, when you get to point A or point B, simply slide that back on if you want to. It locks in place, and you could just carry that to the next job as well. With the database printing, it gives you the same convenience as the PTE 550W. So consider that in data centers. And I know our competitors have some desktop units. They're very, very expensive. This is at least half the price. I'll go on record saying this is half the price of what you're paying for those. It goes up to 36 millimeter. You can download a database. You cannot use it with Linkware Live. This is the only one. So again, keep that in mind for high print volumes. So some of the other issues I run into in data centers is if it's a end user specific data center, and I'm not going to mention any names because I was told not to, but let's say that you've got a big social media platform up in San Francisco. Everything is going to be proprietary to their specs, right? So the patch panels, the face plates, they're going to be a certain manufacturer. The fiber is going to be a certain manufacturer, easy peasy. Sometimes when you go into a colo, they offer their customers their own spec. So you could have different manufacturers in there. Port spacing. Port spacing is huge. And a lot of times I'll go into a data center and I'll see some labels that just aren't spaced right. And they look like hell because they don't fit specifically on high density patch panels. So one of the things that you get with all these machines is, and I've showed this before, but it's a patch panel ruler. And the patch panel ruler, God, that's terrible. Anyway, the beautiful thing about this patch panel ruler is that you can put it up against any manufacturer's patch panel and you're going to get port spacing within 1/100 of an inch. You can't find that stuff online. You just can't do it. And so it becomes a guessing game as far as what the port spacing is to make sure that everything lines up correctly with the ports. So this little tool, which is free, is priceless, absolutely priceless for those who have done work either in data centers or outside of data centers trying to figure out port spacing. The other thing about data centers that I see is high density patch panels. Obviously, this is just a standard patch panel, but high density patch panels. And again, your port spacing gets tighter. But then again, what do you use for tape? Well, I've seen contractors that'll take a 3/8 inch tape, our TZE 221, and what they'll do is they'll print it off and then they'll cut some off the top and then they'll cut some off along the bottom to make it fit in this particular area right here. And it looks like hell. I mean, it's horrible. It's very unprofessional. One of the things we have is a super narrow tape. This is the TZE N201. It's 9/64. So it's the only cassette system out there, and really the only 9/64 tape that I know that will fit in these patch panels. And this particular tape will fit inside of all these machines right here. Now imagine the time that you're wasting, and every contractor I've talked to has done the same thing, is that they'll print it off and they'll cut some off the top and some off the bottom. Number one, you're wasting money because you're buying too much tape, and a lot of that tape is ending on the ground. But number two is you're wasting labor. And if they're not cutting straight, it looks terrible. So those are some of the things that I normally see in data center environments that I think can be improved out there as well. One of the things you want to remember, let's talk about tapes a little bit. We have a couple of different types of tapes. And so our regular TZE tape, which is our standard adhesive tape, is meant for a smooth, flat surface. Maybe a conduit, a smooth conduit. Or a desk or anything smooth and flat. A conduit's not really flat, is it? So I retract that. The other thing we have is TZE S tape. The S tape is identifiable by the red package. Now this is going to be for any unsmooth surface. So anything that is powder coated, anything with micro nooks and crannies, and it's actually got a softer adhesive. So for any of the racks and cabinets that are powder coated out there, I would highly recommend using this, all right, which is our extra strength tape. It costs maybe a fraction more, if you will. For wrapping wires and cables, and I know we've gone through this before, you got to use our FX tape. So this is actually FX tape in right here in the bottle. If you use this tape on a cable wrap, people automatically think, okay, well, it's extra strength. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to wrap it around to wire a cable. Keep in mind, this is meant for a flat surface. So if you put it around something round, it wants to go flat. So it's not going to last too long. So there's a couple of different types of tape that you want to keep in mind when you're using the Brother Industrial labelers. Again, Keep this in mind as far as the super narrow tape, anything that, hell, even a brick wall. You want to label a brick wall, use this. Again, it gets the adhesive gets inside those micro nooks and crannies, but great for patch panels. This particular patch panel right here is a smooth surface. It's not powder coated. I would use a TZE 221/3/8. If it was powder coated, I'd use a TZE S 221. The S stands for extra strength. I don't get it, but anyway, it stands for extra strength. The FX is our flexible tape, which is meant for any round surface, curved surface. Couple of things coming up real quick. We've got about 5 minutes left. We got some exciting news happening within the world of Brother Industrial. We got some new products coming out. Hallelujah, thank God. A couple of things we're looking at is a new and improved TZE FX. Right now, fiber. All right, so normally you need at least 6 millimeters of overlap, which means if you're wrapping around a very small OD, it's tough to do. And then the tape kind of wants to come off a little bit. So there's a lot of heat shrink going on fiber. There's a lot of flags going on fiber. The cool thing about the new improved TZE FX is that you can use it for smaller OD. There's only a 3 millimeter overlap. Flag labels. We got some really exciting new flag labels coming up. This is really cool stuff. All right, so stay tuned for that. It's not our traditional flag, well, which is this guy right here. All right, you can see these things are kind of a pain in the butt to put on, and you don't match them up and directly on the outside of this. It's terrible. So what else? We're working on we have the 4-inch printer out right now. We will have consumables coming out pretty soon. The other thing is I do have my Bixby training up on brothermobilesolutions.com under the Datacom section. So we're offering 2 CECs. What else? I think that's about it. Jamie, what'd you think of the show? Anything I missed today?
Let's see.
I don't know.
You've said the word data center over 35 times. You've said the word labels over 22 times. And you said the word or 21 times. And you only cussed 4.
Well, it depends on what you consider a cuss word. All right. Well, Jamie, you know what? I appreciate your input. I really will try and improve, but thanks for keeping track.
C+.
Yeah. All right. So on August 13th, and I think we're going to do this on the LinkedIn Live. So it's going to be a trial and run for us. Now, what that'll mean is that more people should be able to just click and you're on board right here. So I'm going to go a little further into expand today on what we were talking about: grounding, bonding, raceway, and fire stop. It's part of 606C, but it's an area that gets overlooked a lot. So we're going to try that as well. And then we've got on August 20th, asset management labeling. That's going to be a good one. Again, I go back into the bar coatings. And then September 3rd, a very overlooked sector of what needs to be labeling is outside plants. So stay tuned for that. Kelly, if you could put up the screen for our contacts, if you will. Obviously, you know me by now. I'm Todd. I'm out of Carlsbad, California. We got Mr. Jamie Brookover out of Virginia Beach. We've got Mr. Dan Cobb in Wisconsin. We've got Mr. Bruce Page in Marblehead. I swear I keep forgetting where that is. Anyway, he's back there on the East Coast. Rob Dawkins, which he primarily deals in the manufacturing sector. He's out of North Carolina. And then our glorious leader who could not make the call today, Mr. Craig Robinson, is out of Bradenton, Florida. With that being said, it looks like my time is over. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or you need some bad advice at any time, please reach out. Please take the poll right now. I love these polls. Be truthful, be honest on these polls. These help us either improve or digress on certain issues. So with that being said, I believe that's it. Have yourself a great rest of the week, and please stay safe. Please stay healthy out there, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.
for the light. He'll give you strife. He's Todd. He's tall, he's mean. He's labeling machine. He's Todd. Rides a motorbike. He'll tell you what it's like. He's Todd. Don't know what he'll say. He'll scare the kids away. He's Todd.